Hello and welcome back to Starting Point. Now we are going to have dialogue, Luisa, and a really interesting conversation talking about new animal species. I believe that you have the news on that.
Exactly. The Research Center for Biosystematics and Evolution of Indonesia's Agency for Research and Innovation Agency, or Brin, has successfully described a new species of water snake of the Hysiscopus genus from Sulawesi. Let's have a look. Researchers with the Herpetology Laboratory of Brin Research Center for Biosystematics and Evolution, led by Amir Hamidi, have examined the morphological characteristics of 7 flat-tailed water snake specimens collected from Lengkona Bay, Lake Towuti of South Sulawesi in 2003 and 2019. After comparison with specimens from other Hysiscopus genus, namely Hysiscopus plumbea and Hysiscopus montanensis, and also Hippocampus murphy, this water snake is identified as a new species called Hysiscopus indonesianus. The creature is non-venomous species. The males, which measures between 28 and 45 centimeters, are relatively smaller than the females, measuring between 43 and 62 centimeters. The largest of the collected specimen habitats is freshwater species with rocky substrates, reaching about 70 centimeters in length from head to tail. Amir Hamidi had also joined another research team on frog in a rainforest in Papua, which found a new species called Lithora azurocelis, or the azure ting frog.
Well, Luisa, on that note, the National Research and Innovation Agency, or BRIN, is a non-ministerial government institution in Indonesia. Well, just in line with its duties as a research body, BRIN has discovered and invented many things. And now we are connected with BRIN researcher Amir Hamidi, who will tell us his experience as a scientist, especially after discovering a new reptile and amphibian species in Sulawesi and also a new frog species in Papua. Hello, Pak Amir. How are you doing?
Hello, good morning. I'm very good. I'm happy to be here.
Good morning, Pak Amir, and we're happy to have you here to talk about the new specimens that you have found. Now, you have recently described there is a new water snake species found in Sulawesi. Can you please tell us more about this study?
Yes, the group of these water snakes actually contains 3 described species, and now we describe the 4th species. And there are very limited information of these species, and also the number of specimens limited. So it's resulted the pending of this description. But finally, after 2023, we can describe it, and we collect enough sample on that, and it is very distinct to compare to other species within genus. So scientifically, it is approved and it is published, and now is officially recognized as the new species of water snake in Sulawesi. This species is endemic to Towuti Lake so far. So it is increased the number of species that endemic in Sulawesi. There are other species that also endemic, the Hysiscopus matanensis from the Matano Lakes, and now we are describe a new species from Towuti Lake, which is not far from the Matano Lake. So it is very important the conservation area of the effort of the conservation area around the ancient lake in Sulawesi, because they contain many endemic species that very new to science.
And you mentioned the word endemic. Can you tell us more about what that is in terms of a species?
The endemic is the species that only occur in that area. So if we found like the Hysiscopus indonesiensis is endemic to Towuti Lake, it means this species is only distributed in Towuti Lake. no nowhere else in the world except only in Tawiti Lake. So it's only in that region. So it's very restricted distribution.
Pak Amir, the Raffles Bulletin of Zoology recently published a study on a frog species in a rainforest in Papua. Could you please explain to us what is the Raffles Bulletin of Zoology and how do you do your research?
Raffles Bulletin of Zoology, one of the leading journal, international journal that reveals many biodiversities in the Southeast Asia. And it's a prestigious, one of the prestigious journals. It's included in the one of the best journals that contain any information regarding the finding of the new species and study on the zoology all over the world, including Southeast Asia regions. And we publish a new species in that journals. That journal is based on the Singapore, and it has a long history of the informations regarding new species, finding a new species in Southeast Asia. The finding of these new species in that published in the Raffles Bulletin of Zoology is a collaboration research between the German researcher and Australian researcher. And in Indonesia, we are three of us from Indonesia involved in these findings. And the finding is about new species of frog in Papua. So Papua is a very still untouchable for research, and an opportunity to find new species is very high compared to other area in Indonesia. And the other things is that very few people is working on the taxonomy. As taxonomy is a science that study on the finding of science that study on the naming of species, including describing new species and studying on the systematic. So this science is very important to reveal the biodiversity, how many species that we have. So we have to name it. And to have to describe it is in and it's to be published in the international journals. So that's kind of the process that in describing a new species.
I can imagine how exciting it would be to be researching and looking for a new species, especially like you mentioned in Papua, there are not many people working on this. So it's so challenging, but at the same time, very exciting.
That's true. And I think like the experience as well, Pak Amir, it must be like its own journey to eventually go and find new species. And you mentioned the word that Papua is untouchable. Can you tell us more about why is that the case, that Papua has been an area that has not or has been untouchable for researchers so far, and why is it being explored more now?
Okay. Papua has the largest remaining rainforest in Indonesia. And frogs and amphibians, including frog, reptile, they are very depend on that kind of habitat. They are successful make evolution and speciation in the area that has rainforest, which is high humidity and it contains many waters. And the research in Papua is very limited. You know, costing to go to Papua and doing expedition is not cheap, and it's not many expert on that frog. You know, if we are expert on the specific species, we have to also have specific regions. And the region of the Australo-Papua is very limited. I think less than 7% who working in Papua. And if we know the number of the species, Indonesia has almost 430 species of amphibians. And the highest amphibians possibility described is from Papua, as well as the reptiles. And we have some baseline data to speed up finding of new species by doing a barcoding molecular barcodings. And it is very fast because it can detect is that tool or that equipment can detect in early and very fast the potential of the new species. And the Papua is the highest. It has the highest number of the potential undescribed species. So to describe that species, we need more taxonomists who working on frogs and who working on the reptiles. And the important is to describing new species. If we want to know the potentials bioprospecting from a species that we have to know the name first. Without to know the name, then we will miss the potential from that species, the bioprospecting or others potential utility from the species. So that's why the basic knowledge regarding the finding of new species is very important to reveal our biodiversities. After we reveal our biodiversity, we can study how the biodiversity can contribute to the human advantage or benefit on that, including the bioprospecting.
Now we can sort of tell how meticulous is the whole process of not just finding this new specimen, but also naming the specimen and then doing more research about the specimen. Now, Pa Amir, you mentioned that there is a new frog species that has been found, and it's called Littora azurocelis, or the azure tide tree frog. Can you please explain to us more about this new specimen? What kind of creature is it, and how is it special?
So this species is a group of the large tree frog. So it means this species is living on the top of the tree. So it's higher more than 3 or 2 meters above the ground, and it's the body is basically green, yeah, but the tag has the blue, so it is very distinct compared to other species within this group. So that's why we name it Azuricolis. Azure is mean from the Greek language, deep blue, and Scalis is lake in the Greek language to be Latinized. So if we name a species, we have to use the Latin name. That's the mandatory of International Code of Zoological Nomenclature. We can adopt the local or language, but we have to Latinize. That's why we use the species name is Azuris calis. So that's the etymology of that species. But that group is now contain more than 11 species within a large tree frogs that living in Papua. The species is only occurred in the forest. So if the forest is disappear, I'm pretty sure all these species also will disappear.
So I'm sure it's also important to make sure that the biodiversity of the forest is protected so that this species can also thrive. Pa Amir, in terms of doing these kinds of research, what are the steps needed in order for it to be acknowledged by international journals and institutions? Because I know in order to find this new species, name it, it's already, like we said, a meticulous process. But then like being acknowledged by international journals is also another journey. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So a new species can be officially recognized if it is published in the international journals. And the international journals process consists of the process of reviewing. Who review that journal? It's the expert on that particular field. For example, if I'm describing a new species from the genus of Littoria, the person who review the expert who review that manuscript supposed to be a person who expert on the Littoria. So that's the mandatory of any kind of the international journals. And the description of new species supposed to be content of a picture, a description, and comparison with other species in order to convince that species is new. So we can use the morphological data, we can use the molecular data, and also we can use the call characteristic data, because frog has very specific calling, can distinguish between one species to other species. So a female of frogs only recognize a voice from a male from within a species. So she cannot recognize a voice from others, call from the other species. So that's become the very important character of this scrapping of new species. To be acknowledged by society after it is published in the international journal, a scientist must uh, disseminate this information through the media, so people will know how many new species, and what is how it can be new, and what is the benefit for the human. So and if we can answer it, then the government will can convince to put particular attention to fund it the research, to improve the facility, to support the biodiversity. So this kind process need to be done by many, not only from researcher but also from the research institute or university or other stakeholders in the government or non-government.
Pak Amir, now, having so much experience in this industry, how do you think that the Indonesian government have been supportive in this section? Like, do you think the Indonesia government have been very supportive, or what are the other challenges in this industry?
Well, Indonesia is including the country that's very high on the biodiversity level. So we are on the top of the richness of the species. And because of that, government puts so much attention on that. And it's to, of course, the biodiversity is supposed to be can cause benefit to human being, but also the human has to be attention not to destruct the biodiversity. We can eat, we can has the basic necessity because it's biodiversity. So refill the biodiversity, and continuing research on the bioprospecting is very important, and it can support the development of this country. And the thing that I need to really emphasize here in order to support the biodiversity research is regulations. So strengthen the regulations to make sure that the research really facilitated. So for example, if we're doing the molecular research on the biodiversity, to get the chemicals to support the molecular research is still relatively expensive for us. Even the laboratory facility has been achieved, but the support for the chemical to support the analysis is still very expensive. So this kind of the procedure is supposed to be umbrellaed by some regulations that can support the research as well as the facilities, and also increasing the networking among the scientists from the research center, from the National Research and Innovation Agency, as well as other university, and also expert in NGO and others government. So funding and regulation as well as the networking. I think that's three most pillars to supporting the research on the biodiversity.
And so you said three pillars in order to support the research and biodiversity in Indonesia, which is incredibly important. Are there any, I would say, role model countries that Indonesia should follow, or examples that have succeeded in developing these research in new species, Pak Amir?
Brazil is one of the best country who can manage very well on the biodiversity of finding new species. There are finding new species from Brazil. There are many taxonomies from Brazil, so they can describe their own species, But in Indonesia, we still need more taxonomy. We still more people who work on taxonomies to reveal to cover many species that occur in Indonesia. So if we know the species, it's contain animals, contents of plant, content of fungus, content as microbiota. So to become a taxonomist, I think we need more persons, and it's through the biology expert who affiliate with the university. So if many biologist faculty in the universities or many biology program study in many university can produce more taxonomies, I think it's really can support the development of the biodiversity for this country. Because without taxonomies, it is very impossible to know the potential to get the bioprospecting for the benefit for the human.
Amir, can you please explain to us at the moment, is the taxonomy studies being studied enough in Indonesia's university at the moment?
Well, we have several that expert also in affiliate with the universities. And the most important that if we study on taxonomy, we need to have the specimens. So we not only doing taxonomies by online, we have to scientific material. And scientific material must be deposited in the National Depository Center, and which is a museum or herbarium. In Indonesia, we have the Museum Zoologicum Bogoriense, and the herbarium, we have the Herbarium Bogoriense, and also INACC for the microbes depository. So that's three institution is the main national depository center, and it can be used for many researchers, including the expert from the university. The lack information from the lack facilities from the universities is also because they don't have enough facility to keep the specimen. So that's why it's one of the difficult to improve the taxonomies in university. But as the university, they can educate, they can resulted the graduate students, they can resulted the student who study on the taxonomies, and after studying taxonomies, they can become the taxonomists in the university or in the research institute, and can collaborate with the Brin to study on the biodiversity in Indonesia.
So we need to encourage more people to be interested in this subject matter, but also we still need more funding from the government to create a better environment and better facilities in universities for this taxonomy studies.
Indeed, that means everything, all the actors involved are depending on each other in order to achieve really adequate new species development. But Amir, what are some of the ongoing projects that you have currently, or the future projects that you will have in this new species development?
We have a project of describing some new species from Sundaland. Sundaland it consists of the area of the Sumatra, Borneo, and Java, as well as some part of the Sulawesi and Lesser Sunda. So for Papua, also we have some projects to reveal the biodiversity, including describing new species in amphibian and reptile, because my specialty is in amphibian and reptile. So I will not move from that to object. And I also supervise several graduate students from several university, Ampibi University, University of Indonesia, Gajah Mada universities, and they are in the level of graduate schools for master or dissertation. So if we can produce the doctor degree that also specialists on the taxonomies, I think it's a really deep, good achievement to improve our biodiversity, because their job, after they got the doctoral degree, their job is describing new species, reveal the biodiversity for Indonesia, and studying on the bioprospecting for Indonesia for the benefit for the human and also increasing our economic from the bioprospecting aspect.
Point there. Now, Pak Amir, you seem very passionate in what you do in the study of biodiversity in Indonesia. Perhaps could you please share any message for the young Indonesians out there who like to study zoology and animal biology or natural science?
The greatest laboratory is not in the building. The greatest laboratory is the nature. So if you want to know your nature, go to your backyard. There are biodiversity there. Recognize any species in your area, from the grass, from the bugs, insect, reptile, amphibian, bird, mammals. All there is the biodiversity in the richness biodiversity in your area. So as the young generations, you need to improve your skill to go to the nature, go hiking, go to your backyard, go to the mountain, go to the forest, and you will find many new species, not only during the day, but also during the night, because many species also active during the night. So you will find many interesting there. The second one is that strengthen the networking. By strengthen the networking, all information regarding the biodiversity is very easy to get. And with now the technology is very improved. So any information, you can get it from any sources, from the internet, and also increasing the networking. So that's two messages from me. I think it's very important for the young generation to improve their skill to reveal the biodiversity in Indonesia.
That is such a good quote right there. I mean, nature is just at your backyard. It's everywhere. And I mean, for people like us who live in the city, in the big city, sometimes we forget about that. And we get too hooked up about being indoors. So very nice comment you have right there, Pak Amir.
Yes, and I love that. That means everybody can find these new species as long as we have the willingness and also the openness in mind to look around us and to look in nature.
Find a richness in
Find a richness in nature. Yes, like that, Luisa. Well, Pak Amir, Hamidi, thank you so much for coming on TVRI World. It has been a great and insightful conversation with you. Pak Amir Hamidi, a Brin researcher. Thank you so much, Pak. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.